Guys, welcome. It's another Hot Topic Tuesday. It is July 19th today, and special guest is Mr. Greg Eastman from RK Home Inspections. Greg is essentially going to walk us through, as a home inspector, but with the eyes of a real estate agent, what possibly should we be looking for as the home inspection is going on? So, Mr. Greg Eastman, it's all yours, sir.
Okay, ready? As Darwin indicated, my name is Greg Eastman, RK Home Inspections. I'm the owner and sole employee of RK Home Inspections. Just a quick background of me. I've graduated from Lawrence Institute of Technology with a Bachelor's of Science in Architecture. Worked 33 years for General Motors as a head architect and as a project architect. Retired in 2019 and started RK Home Inspections. I decided to use my degree for the betterment of society, if you want to say. I'm a certified member of the INTRNACHI, which is the International Association of Home Inspectors. And they're the only online school in the country that's certified or board certified for instructions. So like Darwin indicated, what I just wanted to do is just kind of walk through as you walk a house, from the time you get out of your car to walk up to it. Just little things to look for. I'm not expecting you to obviously go in a crawl space or go into basements to look at certain things, go in the attic or anything like that. But so basically, some of this is gonna be real basic and some of this may be informative. So, I mean, one of the things you look for is the concrete, the driveway, if it's concrete, asphalt, or stone. Look for trip hazards, either the slabs of concrete heaving or sinking, deterioration of the material. As it gets older, you can see that starts to pit and things like that. And the newer concrete obviously looks great. The other thing is to look for grading of the soil around the house. This one's a little hard to see, but you can see from here at the garage door. Can you see my arrow, Darwin? Is that?
Yeah, you're showing that arrow is there when you do that.
Okay. So it starts here and you can see for about 10 feet that it grades, it slopes away from the house. The ideal situation is 4 to 6 inch drop and about 10 feet for softscapes, and hardscape is in a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch in 10 feet. Just something, and it's just more of a feel. As long as it's sloping away from the house, that's a good thing. Otherwise, they're going to start getting water intrusion into the basements and things like that.
I think the TV did its thing.
What happened?
You're good, Greg. Go ahead.
Okay, just still sharing. Okay. So then this was the house I inspected, and you can see this area, which is an entrance into the basement. You can see the road height is up here and it travels. This is a corner lot. It comes around to the right and all slopes down to this door. And this is the door from the inside. You can see the water damage. And when you actually walk the basement, you'll see the permanent water stain about 2 to 3 inches above the floor. So it is a continuing issue for this particular house. So it's just something to look for, is watermarks, water stains in the basement when you walk it. The other thing is, from the exterior of the house, is vegetation. The best method for insect infestations is through plants and trees. So where trees touch the building, bushes touch the structure, you get shrubs down here. You'll get one of the big ones are hostas. It's a perfect way for animals to, or not animals, but bugs to get into the house. They love to travel that way. And then the other thing about something like this, it's rubbing on the roof, it's going to start to deteriorate the shingles in that particular location. And my biggest thing is, like what Darwin and I talked about, is this could be something you can indicate to the seller, potential seller, something they may want to fix before I come in and, or somebody buys it and does an inspection. The other thing I offer too is pre-sale inspections, where I'll come in and do the inspection, at the point in time you've listed it, and then, excuse me, and then I will offer a discount on the inspection on the house to the buyer, since I've already done an inspection to the house. Roofing, some of the things you can just look for. It doesn't look like much, but there's a hump. You can see it right here. It goes down from the chimney all the way down. Here's another angle from it. Look for humps, bumps, but underneath that hump, there's the chimney. There's the water staining, and it's actually rotting the wood from the inside. So not something you'd be able to see unless you went up into the attic, but I'm not expecting, I don't like being in the attic any longer than I have to. I wouldn't expect anybody else would either. You just see more of the staining. And this is just basically, if you stepped on it or pushed through, I've had actually pushed in all through that. So it's actually really soft wood. Other things look for flashing, gutters. This one was just dropped down. Happened to be raining that day, so it was perfect for me to pick it up, but you can see the water coming over the gutter. It's not causing any damage to the roof, but it's just something that could be looked at in the wintertime. That's going to form ice in that. Something here, it looks normal from this view. You get up closer, it's missing the drip edge. So it's just little things that you can see flashing. This is proper flashing. The better methods are what they call counter flashing. So it's a flashing that comes up the chimney and then another one that goes over the top of that flashing. Some issues with some of the houses built in the 90s, 80s, where they use stucco. A lot of the builders ran the stucco right down to the asphalt shingles. You can see stucco is not a friend of water, so it starts to break away. And you can see all that. That should have been flashed differently and held an inch up from the shingles. Some of the areas, the obvious ones, are like looking at the eaves. When you get into wood, you'll start to see decay, and you can see on these Tudor type houses the decay in the wood, just basically not being properly maintained. You can see this one on the fenestration on the front of the house, and this is the soffit or fascia again as well. Some simple things to see. Then some of the things, sometimes you'll see holes like this and people are thinking, well, that's just maybe the wood or something like that. No, that's woodpeckers. They love to get into this T111 and just peck away looking for bugs. And there's some up in this area in this part of the same chimney. Chimneys, just look for discoloration. This particular chimney had to be rebuilt from this point, this grout joint, all the way up. So it's a costly thing, but it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap. You just got to get a mason to come out and do that, and then they check the chimney flue. But it's just an easy look at discoloration. You can look for missing mortar, like this one's got mortar missing. Just little things you can look at and point it out to the seller.
Hey, Greg, quick question. That discoloration, the difference between, is there an indication of something on that? Is it brick replacement? Is it a maintenance issue? What?
Good point. Sorry, thanks, Darwin. I missed that part. But basically, that usually indicates exhaust fumes. So there's a good chance that there's a problem with this flue somewhere down on this joint that's inside the chimney, and the exhaust gases from the fires are coming up through this area and discoloring the block or brick. It's not always an indication, but it is a good indicator. And that's why a lot of times when I do a inspection, it has a fireplace, any type of masonry fireplace, even what they call potbelly stoves, any type of wood burners, gas stoves, or gas fireplaces. I always ask for a level 2 or suggest a level 2 inspection, which is by a chimney sweep. They're certified to check these. Make sure your flue is intact. There's no backup, that they're clean. You're not going to get a chimney fire, which is basically majority of the house is always burned down from that because it goes undetected and then goes through the attic, and then next thing you know, the living quarters is affected. But yeah, thanks to everyone for asking that. Typical basements, you'll see a lot of this staining, which is an organic material. In this particular case, it's just Aaron gets after me sometimes from Dry Medics, and I said, well, it's just mildew. And he said, well, mold is mold. Some people are affected by mildew, some aren't, but this is pretty typical. This can be cleaned with bleach and then sprayed with a anti-mold compound. And then a lot of times you can look and just, if you throw a dehumidifier and it'll never come back in the basement. Sometimes when you walk in a basement, if you see a dehumidifier, you know there's a moisture issue. This is a crack that was repaired. It's in the column or beam pocket. The whole beam pocket was repaired and it's repaired properly. It's just a shrinkage crack. It's not a structural because there was no other indications from that.
So Greg, it was still on that crack, actually. A great thought for everybody to be aware of. Maybe you could cover, are all cracks bad? Is there a difference between vertical cracks or horizontal?
Yeah, vertical cracks typically a lot of times are structural, or not structural, but shrinkage cracks. They can be if it's associated. When you start to see, like across the top of this will be a wood plate, sill plate, and if that has separated from the block, that means, or even concrete, that's starting to indicate that the wall is settling. But if it's been patched and it does not continue to separate, it basically has done its settling issues. Horizontal cracks a lot of times are soil and water generated. That means the wall is starting to bow in at that particular spot, and that's where you need to get a structural engineer or even a water mitigation company to go on the outside of the house and look to see if the drainage is acting properly. Sometimes you can go on the outside of the house where you've seen horizontal cracks and there's a big ass tree and the roots are starting to affect the foundation. A lot of people love to put those arborvitaes up against their house as decoration, but they're one of the worst to do because when they're hard to trim back, and next thing you know, they're 10 foot tall and their root ball is starting to affect the foundation, and sometimes, a lot of times, the drainage around the foundation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Arborvitaes, who'd have known?
Yeah, exactly. They grow fast. That's the problem. They can be 10 foot, 15 foot tall. Next thing you know, they're up to your eaves on a 2-story house.
And I think, an interesting point that you bring up there too is just the trees.
Yes.
Trees near the foundation.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Sometimes they're lucky and they don't have a problem with it, but that's always when I see some cracks, I can go on the outside of the house, or if I remember walking the house first outside before going in the basement, I'll know that there's a tree sitting out there. A lot of times I start in the basement, then I do the exterior after. But yeah, it's funny what trees will do in the roots. I mean, the same thing that makes that'll heave a concrete driveway or sidewalk are tree roots. That's notorious. A lot of the cities have those tree-lined streets, and almost every spot where you've got a tree, you've got a sidewalk that's heaved at the joint.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Greg, is there a guide for uneven sidewalks or driveways when it comes to financing?
For financing, it usually becomes not usually an issue with banks. It's more, a lot of times it's more for your insurance liability because it's going to be a trip hazard. You don't want anybody walking on your property and then tripping over it and then, issuing a lawsuit or, insurance claim against your insurance company.
And that, yeah, I know for, I don't believe it's changed, but FHA, VA, RD, 1 inch, I believe is the level. So anybody who's new to that, 1 inch on those three types of financing, you
Yeah.
could run into an issue. And of course, that's still a little bit of the luck of the draw on the appraiser who comes out. Are they even really paying attention, looking at it, or do they care? So
Right.
good stuff. Good
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do any surface unevenness, I mark it out as an issue in the report, and I always issue it as a repair. Sometimes if it's like you said, if it's less than an inch or so, you can grind that surface down and it'll meet the requirements for FHA and BA. Sometimes depending on municipalities, City of the Royal Oak, Westland, Redford, they'll come out and actually do an inspection in those particular cities prior to the sale of the house. And then sometimes the buyer will give me that inspection and say, what do you think? And sometimes I argue with the cities because I'm like, that's not a major issue. It's not a safety. The city's supposed to be going after safety and health issues. And so I note those in my reports and I put them in as red as far as like a safety issue. This is a great crawl space. I love doing the inspection on this one. It was dry. I could actually crawl through it, not have to worry about animals or bugs or anything like that. But this is like a perfect crawl space if you ever wanted to have one. Plumbing.
Matter of fact, it's interesting you put it that way. That's the perfect crawl space.
Yes.
Ideally, that's what we would see. Is there really a problem to having one which is, still as they used to do it, nothing but dirt in the bottom?
They still do them. Yep. What they'll do is they do put plastic down now, and it depends on the crawl space. If it's tempered, like heated to the house, then you'll have insulation on your the bottom of your floor joists. But they still require you to have the plastic. I think it's 60 mil plastic down on the ground for a lot of things, moisture. Heaven forbid we have this radon, just different things. So they like to have that done. There's a company out there that does convert crawl spaces. They also do it on new houses. They put plastic down and then they spray foam the foundation walls, and that seals it up nice and tight. And then you don't have to insulate the floor. And then you can basically run your heat ducts through there and not have to insulate those as well. So it does, and it creates an area where you can actually use, like that particular one, you could actually store things down there. There was some water down there, but it's from the pipe sweating. So you just put a 2x4 planks down and then you can set things down there, Christmas decorations and all that good stuff.
Hey, Greg, there is a question as to whether or not you have a contact or who the company would be that you might recommend for that.
Oh, for doing that? Who was that company? I had them spray foam my house. I think it's called Seal Tight.
Seal Tight?
Yeah. I have to. I can find it out too and make sure and pass it on to you, Darwin. Okay,
yeah, you can forward it to me. I'll get it out to the group.
Okay.
I have a quick question. You mentioned about city inspections for Westland and Oak, Royal Oak. Are you saying that those cities still require inspections before the seller sells the home?
Royal Oak doesn't, but Westland and portions of Dearborn and Redford do. They actually will come into, like Redford particularly, they came into a house that I inspected and I saw that the wall had bowed out significantly. And the city of Redford made the seller fix it before he could sell it. So that was kind of like a delay.
I'm going to add to that, John is here and he's saying at all of the points, so Grosse Points, they all have the inspections. Garden City is another one who does inspections. I know Pontiac, if it's a rental, they require inspections, not for sales, but Warren is another one. So real key is make sure that, you're involving your manager and the manager will help you out. Mount Clemens, John Goings, Mount Clemens, if it's a rental.
Yeah.
So there's a few of them out there.
Yeah. There was, I don't do inspections in Hamtramck, but Hamtramck's another one. A friend of mine has a house down there, and they actually do an annual inspection, no matter if you're selling it or not, that you have to comply to certain codes and stuff like that, or ordinances. If your fence is in repair, you have to repair that fence because they did an inspection. If you don't, you get fined $300. So Hamtramck's another one that does something like that. So I know more, and I know Milford on rental properties are requiring inspections now. So if you're buying a house in Milford or Milford Township to do as an investment rental, they're going to require a inspection every 3 years. My son does those inspections. So he runs a home inspection company out of south of Lansing, but he dabbles in my backyard a lot of times, but he can have those inspections. He's the provide for the family. So the name of that company was Seal Tech, Sealtech.
Okay, so there, yeah, just clear, not Seal Tight, but Seal Tech.
Yep.
All right.
And I believe there's a few other companies that have started doing that too. It's basically a closed cell foam. And they put the plastic down, they run it up partially up to the wall, and then they cover that seam. They do a real nice job. So sometimes when you get into the basement, this is all exposed plumbing. So this was an older home, but you can see the corrosion around these seams, and then you'll see a corrosion starting across that, and it continues down the pipe. That was a crack. Because it's sewage, it doesn't fill, so it doesn't really leak the same way. This is more sewer gas that was coming up through that, and eventually seals itself. But really, it's something you want to get repaired. And this is the same house, so you have water damage around stack pipes, drain pipes, bathtub drain pipes. This is a bathtub, actually. These two are probably wax rings, because these were toilets. So a lot of times you'll see this, and then in this particular case, that floor could actually rot away, and somebody could sit on the pot and fall through. So these are all visible from underneath too, unfinished basements. And then some hidden things you don't necessarily find. You go in the basement, you can see this is a ground wire, so it's not hot. It shouldn't be hot, but based on the way the rest of this is wired, I wouldn't guarantee that if you touch that copper that you wouldn't get a little slight jolt. But you can see there's no wire or harness that's around the hole that prevents it from getting, because this could move over time and it could fray, exposing copper, because it is on a floor joist. So this does heave when you walk across it. Another situation, this was above the ceiling tile. And then this one was that first house that I showed you with the flooding in the basement. No cover panel to the electrical panel. That is totally, and then the wires up here. It's just, this is I try not to say a DIY person, because I'm a DIY person, but I do kind of follow codes, and maybe because of my degree. But it's this is just something you don't want to do when you're selling a house, is have the panel off the panel, the panel cover off the panel. You want to cover those.
And then this is also, again, just FHA, VA, and rural development. These would all be things that would likely be flagged and a required repair. I mean, so it is a safety issue. It should be taken care of.
Exactly.
But also financing is not going to fly through. You're going to need somebody to take care of those things.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had houses which actually had a fuse box, and the homeowner, the buyer, had already talked to their insurance agent, figuring out the costs and stuff like that. And the insurance agent found out it was fuses, and they said, "We won't insure your house."
Greg, you had mentioned it earlier about you doing pre-inspections. So this to me is, if the stuff you showed in the basement alone, between the plumbing and this type of electrical, if you saw this, it may be a recommendation to your homeowner that they consider a pre-inspection so they know what to take care of prior to even putting the home on the market.
Yeah, exactly. That was our intent to do that, is to prepare. I mean, like you and I have talked about, Darwin, I don't do this to buyers to scare them away from the house. You want the house, you love the house. This is what it's going to take to get it fixed, to take care of certain problems. And I only flag them if it's a safety issue, as far as being a red item. If it's just something like a GFCI is not next to the sink, it's not the end of the world, but I will note that it's got to be replaced. But you go out and buy a $15 GFCI and you put it in, you can do it yourself, or you can hire somebody. Or if you, like one friend of mine had, his father-in-law was an electrician. So basically it was free to, to do that, but it's not a difficult thing. And I try not to do it to tell the buyers that I don't say this is going to cost you $15,000 and you should go back to the seller and, negotiate a different price. Because a lot of times the house, I always say the house is commensurate of what it's worth. They know that there are certain problems with the house and it's priced accordingly. So to say, well, I want to replace that roof in 10 years, or it needs to be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years, I want $10,000 off the price of the house. And they'll ask me, and I said, no, absolutely not. That's maintenance. That's wear and tear in the house. That's home ownership. You need to suck it up and save the money and buy, replace it in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, you know it's going to have to be done in a few years.
Yeah.
It's just called maintenance. Welcome to home ownership.
Yeah, it's like buying a car and you're going to have it for 6 years, and in 5 years you got to replace the tires. You're not going to tell the dealer, well, give me money off so I can buy tires in 5 years. That's not the situation. So
You've got to change the oil.
Yeah, exactly. So
Well,
pre-sale.
hey, Greg, we got just a couple of minutes left here. I dare say this 30 minutes went a little bit quicker than either one of us expected. So
yeah.
Maybe hit any key highlights you got left for us.
Yeah, just real quick. One of the things, nice thing to have in your back pocket is a bright LED light, flashlight. This was not visible. This is a patch to the ceiling. You turn a bright LED white bright and you put it up close to the ceiling, that's going to show right up. It shows up with a flash on a camera. So that was actually a leak that was in the master bath, had one of those hot tub jacuzzi tubs. And I brought it up and they confronted the seller and he says, yeah, it was a year ago. We fixed it. It's patched. And unfortunately, it was not a accessible hot tub, so I couldn't see underneath it. So we had to kind of take the word of the mouth, the word of the seller. Another spot in the basement that, I go through with the humidity tester. So this area of the basement was 98% wet. So there's definitely an active water leak. And then not the insulation, but there's many kinds of insulation. That's just what I wanted to point out was more the types. There's blown in fiberglass, there's bat insulation, there's cellulose insulation. You can see where they started to insulate, but decided not to do the rest of the attic. And that's kind of where I was at. And then just like I was going to get is on the pre-sale inspections, I gives the seller the opportunity. Example, he may not have known he had a leak in his attic. And so if I go up in the attic and I saw that, like the earlier slides that shows darkened wood or stained wood, I can point that out. And maybe as a realtor and the seller doesn't want to fix it, then maybe he says, well, let's knock $5,000 off the price because I know they got to replace the roof or fix that area, type of thing. But it's a better negotiating tool for the seller. And me as a person, I hate to be surprised. So I hate to be selling this house and then the inspector comes through and says, hey, your foundation is cracked, you've got a leak in your attic, your plumbing shot, all that good stuff. But yeah, so I mean, that's where I'm at. Hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So Greg, if anybody needed to, how would they reach out to you? What's a good number or contact information they can reach you at?
Okay, yeah, I should have put that on here someplace. The phone number for RK Home Inspections is 248-345-5730. And my email address, which is another good way, is Road King Home Inspections. So that's where the RK comes, Road King Harley Davidson. So ROADKING Home Inspections @gmail.com.
For motorcycle enthusiasts, Greg is one.
Yes. Yeah, when
There may be times when you can't get him.
Yeah, there'll be a few times.
He will be on his bike. Hey, Greg, as far as like radon, water tests, sewer, or I should say septic inspections, do you do any of those?
I do radon. I will tell the seller on a radon inspection. I'm doing one right now. I think I mentioned that I dropped 2 canisters off the other day and some poltergeists in the house took them away. We couldn't find them anywhere in the house. So I've got to go back and do that. But I do radon testing. But just understanding that if you want the radon test done before closing, it probably won't happen because it's about a week to 2 weeks before you get the test results back, because it is a mail service. There are some inspectors out there that had actually the equipment. It's just I haven't invested in it. It's about $1,500 in the test equipment. I can tell you the situation right away. Water testing, I'm dabbling in doing that. It's basically a test kit, and you buy at Home Depot and you put water in there and you put the litmus paper in there and it turns colors and it tells you what's in it as far as chemicals and things like that. Sewer, I don't. I stayed away from sewer. There's a lot to it as far as sewer and septic, and a lot of times if it's city sewer, I do have a name of a company who will scope. They're a real good company. They have the scope and they will scope the lines out to the city sewer, because sometimes you have tree roots that go into that. City's not responsible for that. City's only responsible up to the property line. And as far as septic tanks and fields, that's a real specialty. Not a lot of inspectors will do that either. So I don't do those, but I am doing radon, and I'm thinking about adding water testing to my portfolio.
So, regarding scoping of sewer lines, I don't think it really matters if it's a septic system or if it's connected to city sewer. It is something to, consider in talking with your buyer clients about. And also know this, that if you sell anything within the city of Ann Arbor, definitely do it, and maybe do a search for Orangeburg tile. It was a interesting form of pipe, but here's what we know. After all these years, it's not really deteriorated, it's just collapsing. It's not strong enough and it's falling in on itself. So guys, if you have anything out in that area, definitely have a recommendation that it be scoped. Otherwise, they could be having a $10,000 bill to be able to replace a sewer line to connect back to the city sewer.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Well, gang, I've got to be respectful of everybody's time, and I apologize for any connections you might have had getting in today. Greg Eastman, thank you again, my friend. Wonderful job. We benefited everyone, and there's lots more to be able to come. And so if you need more, let us know. But Greg, I thank you again. Any closing words, sir?
I just one, and then you and I have talked about this before. I've had some realtors that are suggesting to buyers not to have a home inspection. I think there's too many issues that can happen with a house that doesn't get a home inspection. And then the buyer is stuck. I had a real estate agent suggest to my son-in-law and his wife to not have a home inspection when I was standing right there. He didn't know I was an inspector. And he asked, my son-in-law turned to me, he says, "So Dad, as an inspector, what would you say?" And I says, unless he's willing to write the check for any repairs in the next year or so, I don't think it's a wise idea. So in their particular house, we did not do the inspection at the request of my son-in-law. And we found a cut floor joist in the bathroom because they wanted to get the plumbing in a certain spot. So that was cut and it sank. My son-in-law would walk across the floor and it would drop about an inch. So we had to repair that. And then I had a very similar leak to the one that I showed you pictures on in the first floor. It was a tri-level in the first floor, and it was a $11,000 hit to their budget this year. So, and they bought it this year. So yeah, it was a little rough. And I said, I told my son-in-law, I said, that's why you get inspections.
I'll tell you, someday I think we just need to have a talk show roundtable with inspectors and mortgage people and title people and managers and just say, so what have you run into in your career?
Right.
That's a great example. Hey guys, if anybody ever says, yeah, I'm okay with waiving a home inspection or appraisals or any of those things, you guys know that we have in our packages a waiver that says, hey, don't blame us. We told you that you should, but you've decided not to, so that you had an attractive offer.
Exactly.
Well, anyway, Greg, thank you again, guys. That brings another wrap up to our Hot Topic Tuesday. And we will see you again next week for another one. Go out and talk to people. We'll see you.
Thank you, everybody.